What if one of America's most iconic love stories wasn't as perfect as it looked? Because behind the glamour, behind the headlines, and behind the idea of a modern-day royal couple, there was a reality far more complicated and far more human. The story of John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy has always felt larger than life. To the public, they weren't just a couple, they were America's prince and princess. But the truth? Even the way their story is told today isn't entirely real. Because when Hollywood steps in, reality often takes a back seat. Take the way they first met. On screen, it's pure cinematic magic. A glamorous fundraiser in 1992, a perfectly timed introduction, effortless chemistry. It feels destined. But in real life, it's not that simple. Some accounts suggest their first meeting happened somewhere much quieter, inside a Calvin Klein store. No spotlight, no dramatic music, just a fitting room and a moment that changed everything. At the time, Carolyn was working as a publicist, known for her quiet confidence and magnetic presence. And when John walked in looking for suits, he didn't just leave with clothes. He left completely captivated. Friends later said something about her was different, unpredictable, powerful, almost impossible to ignore. In fact, one close friend claimed John made a shocking declaration almost immediately. He wanted to marry her, from the very beginning. Now think about that for a second. A man constantly surrounded by celebrities, power, attention. And yet, it was her who stood out. But even here, the story splits into multiple versions. And that's the pattern you start to notice. The deeper you go into their relationship, the more the line between truth and storytelling begins to blur. Take the proposal. If you've seen dramatized versions of their story, you've probably seen the moment. Emotional, symbolic, almost poetic. John pulling out a ring that once belonged to his mother, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. A gesture loaded with history, legacy meaning. Except it didn't actually happen that way. In reality, Carolyn received a custom-designed ring. Elegant, personal, but far less dramatic. His mother's ring? That came later, as a separate gift. Still meaningful, just not the fairy tale version people were sold. And that's what makes their story so fascinating. Because even the real moments were constantly being rewritten, reshaped, retold. Like the infamous public argument. In shows, it's tied to cold feet, hesitation, doubts about the proposal. But the truth paints a very different picture. The argument did happen, but not for the reasons people think. According to those close to John, the tension came from something deeper. Carolyn was frustrated, not because she didn't love him, but because she felt he let people walk all over him. Imagine that dynamic for a moment. The most watched man in America, and the woman who refused to treat him like royalty. That alone tells you everything about their relationship. It wasn't just romance. It was intensity, real, unfiltered, sometimes uncomfortable truth. And then there's the myth-making that goes even further. At one point, stories began suggesting Carolyn played a key role in discovering Kate Moss. It sounds believable. After all, she worked in fashion. She had influence. But by then, Kate Moss was already rising. Carolyn may have supported her, but discovering her? That's where storytelling starts stretching reality. And it didn't stop there. Even inside John's own professional world, the narrative gets twisted. The drama surrounding George magazine, the idea that his co-founder pushed him to publish wedding photos. According to insiders, that never even happened. In fact, it's something they say he would have never agreed to. So why does it keep showing up? Because the real story wasn't dramatic enough. Or maybe, because the truth didn't fit the image people wanted to believe. And that image reached its peak at their wedding. A secret ceremony on Cumberland Island. Just 40 guests. No media. No spectacle. Carolyn arriving in a minimalist dress designed by Narciso Rodriguez. A look that would become iconic. From the outside, it looked like perfection. But inside, things were already more complicated than anyone realized. Because being part of the Kennedy world wasn't easy. Carolyn wasn't just marrying a man. She was stepping into a legacy, a system, a spotlight, a pressure few people could truly understand. Every move watched, every moment analyzed, every flaw magnified. And slowly, that pressure began to show. There were arguments, public tension, moments that paparazzi captured, but never fully explained. At one point, after a particularly visible fight, family matriarch Ethel Kennedy reportedly stepped in. Not with comfort, but with tough love. A reminder that this life didn't leave room for cracks. By 1999, things had reached a turning point. They had started marriage counseling. Some friends believed they were close to separating. Others insisted they were still deeply in love. But here's the truth. No one could fully see from the outside. They were trying to hold on to something real in a world that constantly turned their lives into a performance. And then, everything changed. July 16, 1999. John pilots a small plane toward Martha's Vineyard. On board, Carolyn and her sister. The weather wasn't ideal. Visibility was poor. And somewhere over the Atlantic, the plane disappeared. In an instant, it was over. John was 38. Carolyn was 33. And just like that, a complicated, very human love story was frozen into legend. The headlines came fast. The grief came faster. And the myth, it became untouchable. Because from that moment on, they were no longer just people. They became a symbol of love, of tragedy, of what could have been. The so-called Kennedy curse grew louder. Another loss, another story cut short. But maybe the most important part of their story isn't the tragedy. It's the reality that came before it. Because before the headlines, before the mythology, they were just two people navigating love under impossible pressure. And maybe that's why their story still fascinates us today. Not because it was perfect, but because it wasn't. Do you think their relationship would have survived if they had stayed out of the spotlight? Or was the pressure of the Kennedy legacy always going to tear it apart? Let me know what you think.